Hi everyone, my name's Becky Clover and I am the Urban Biodiversity Officer for the Urban Nature Project at the Natural History Museum in London. The Urban Nature Project is one of our big flagship projects at the moment, and it involves lots of different parts, both on site at the museum, around the country and online. We're developing our gardens at the museum to provide an accessible and biodiverse green space in central London, with a new learning centre for kids and adults to come and learn about the natural world and the wildlife in our grounds. We're also working with different partner museums across the UK to provide activities to connect people to nature in their urban areas and on their doorsteps. I'm going to talk through a few ways you can monitor your urban green spaces that you're involved with through groundwork. Why might you want to assess your urban green space before you begin doing anything to try and improve it for biodiversity? You might want to establish a baseline from which you can monitor from in the future to see if the changes you've made have improved the site for biodiversity. It's useful to help decide a management approach that suits the site's conditions and the existing wildlife. You can help to assess the likely impact of any proposed management or changes that you want to make. And it can help to see if you're likely to have any protected species or habitats on the site, which will need consideration, or on the other hand, if there might be some non-native invasive species which will need to be removed or monitored. The first thing you could do is a desk-based assessment, and by this we just mean a computer search, and it involves looking at existing records and maps from the area around your site. It really depends what you want to know, how much detail you want to go into, and kind of how you decide to do this. And the best place to go for this kind of information first is your local environmental record centre. You can ask them for the biological records of certain species groups or habitats, or just every record they have from your site, plus a radius around it, depending on what you're interested in. They may charge a small fee for this, although for local wildlife groups and non-commercial purposes, the data are usually free of charge. And they'll probably send you some maps and PDFs with tables of biological records. So these will include the location, the species, dates they were recorded, and who made each record. There's also several open access datasets and maps that you could use, such as Magic Map, which stands for Multi-Access Geographic Information for the Countryside, bit of a mouthful there. And this is a DEFRA free resource which can be found online. And it's an interactive map, and you can draw a polygon around your site, and you can choose a radius to search from, as you can see from this yellow circle that I've got around the wildlife garden at the museum in the top right of this slide. And then you can choose what records you'd like to see within this radius, such as records of granted European protected species licenses, which are normally granted for things like development. So when people build houses or roads, they have to get a license for species like bats, great crested newts, hazel dormice, certain invertebrates that are protected, and other protected species. You can look at mapped priority habitats, such as deciduous woodland, acid grassland, wood pasture and parkland, heathland, traditional orchard, as well as different ancient woodland sites. You can look at nearby designated sites, such as sites of special scientific interest and local nature reserves. And you can also see the impact risk zones around these protected sites. These are shown by the kind of purple lines coming out from that triple SI in the bottom right of the slide. But be aware that just because a species record or a habitat isn't mapped on Magic Map, it doesn't mean it isn't present in the area. It might just not have been put on the map yet. And some other tools that you could use include soilscapes, which you can see on the bottom left here. And this is an interactive map on which you can zoom into your site to see what the soil type is, as well as its drainage and the fertility. And this can help you to plan what to plant on the site or what might grow well. Some other useful tools are iRecord and iNaturalist, and you can view biological records that people have submitted on a map for your local area. You can filter this by the species group, the date, and the type of record. So, for example, if it's been verified as correct or not. And Google Earth is also a really useful tool to see how a site connects to adjacent land, maybe whether there's any green corridors through which animals or different plants could have colonised the site, the change over time as well. So you can look at historic satellite images and aerial photographs on Google Earth by clicking, there's a little clock symbol in the toolbar at the top, and you can kind of go back in time with that. So once you've had a look online at what's in your local area and even on your site, you could then go ahead and do your actual site assessment. So it's best to do this in the spring or summer months when plants are in flower. And you want to see what broad habitat types your site has first. So does it contain grassland, scrub, woodland, ponds, ornamental planting, etc.? And if it's useful, especially if your site is large or complex, mark up a map of the site with each broad habitat type kind of color coded or labeled, which is really helpful. You can then carry out some more detailed surveys to see what kinds of grassland, woodland, etc. the site supports based on the plants that are present. And there's lots of resources out there for beginners plant surveys, including guides to indicator species for a range of habitat types. You can assess the site for its potential to support different species groups, like amphibians. So have you got a pond? Are there ponds nearby? If not, are there areas amphibians could use to shelter, hibernate and forage, such as log piles, rubble piles, or long vegetation? For breeding birds, are there trees, scrub, buildings that birds can make their nests in? And there could also be suitable habitat for ground nesting birds in some areas. For bats, how well lit is the site at night? Are there any buildings with potential roosting features or trees with features like woodpecker holes or plates of cracked bark? And species such as the common pipistrelle bat are actually quite common in urban areas, and they'll forage over a range of habitats, kind of including gardens, allotments. Often, even if there is some artificial lighting, they'll often still be there. For invertebrates, are there any particularly good quality habitats for invertebrates, like open mosaic habitat, flower-rich plantings, some deadwood or flower-rich grassland? For reptiles, is there some long grassland, ruderal vegetation or scrub, or features suitable for shelter like log piles or spoil piles? And if the site is well connected to adjacent land, which is also suitable for reptiles, then this increases the chances of them being present. For other mammal species other than bats, are there any kind of holes that they could have been used by fox, badger, rabbit? And they could also be small mammal species such as voles and mice in areas of long grassland and scrub. And lastly, are there any invasive non-native species which you need to be aware of, such as Japanese knotweed, Himalayan balsam, or invasive aquatic plants like floating pennywort if you've got a pond, for example? Once you've thought about potential habitats and niches on your site, you can then look into what species might be present from each of these groups. And in order to do this, you could follow some standardized survey methodologies if they're available for your selected group. For example, there's lots of standard surveys for beginners for things like butterflies, amphibians, and birds. And there's lots of national recording schemes which provide identification guides, methodologies, and a data repository for your results. And if possible, it's best to gather data throughout the year on a range of different species groups, because this can help to build a picture of the site's biodiversity to inform any management actions. In short, it's just really important to know what species are on your site in the first place in order to decide what actions to take to improve biodiversity. For example, if there's amphibians present in the terrestrial habitat, but there's no pond, you could build one. If there's reptiles such as slow worm present, you could manage the site's vegetation in the right way to help the species to thrive and also provide some shelter such as log piles or hibernacula. And hibernacula are these kind of slightly buried features with rubble and logs and lots of nooks and crannies that species like reptiles and amphibians can hibernate in. If you find that bats are foraging over the site, you can ensure there's no unnecessary artificial lighting and plant some native nectar-rich plants to attract the invertebrates that the bats will forage on. And if there's no features for breeding birds already, you could plant a hedgerow or some trees, or allow some scrub to grow, or provide some bird boxes. If you find any mammal holes, you could set a camera trap to see what's using them. And once you know this, if they're active, you could help provide resources for the species or just make sure that they're not impacted by any disturbance. And finally, if you record, for example, a particular butterfly foraging over the site, you could plant its larval food plant to encourage it to breed on the site the next year. Now, you might be thinking, this is all very well, but where do I start with monitoring and learning how to identify different species groups? And where can I put my records and how can I use them to inform management decisions? So for the Urban Nature Project, we've talked to lots of people from beginners to small wildlife interest groups to organisations like Groundwork, Natural England, RHS, local record centres, the Royal Parks and lots of others, because we wanted to see what kind of toolkit of online resources we could provide to make recording wildlife easier for people. People wanted to be given some easy access packages of surveys they could do, as well as more browsable in-depth catalogues and a survey calendar. So we've come up with the Nature Recording Hub, which is now on our Natural History Museum website. And the hub contains catalogues of resources such as survey methodologies and identification guides. And it's aimed at all abilities from beginners to more advanced surveyors. And if you go on our website, you can find it in the Take Part section at the top, or just search the Nature Recording Hub and it should come up on your search engine. The hub includes some info on getting started, such as how to make a biological record, so what needs to be in the record, and where to put your records rather than just leaving them in a handwritten notebook forever, so no one ever sees them. And the best way for beginners to start making biological records is potentially through things like the iNaturalist app, or if you're a bit more experienced, iRecord. And both of these apps are really great, and they also support some kind of AI photo recognition technology, which can be helpful. But be wary of this. It's quite useful in kind of narrowing down what you're looking at, but it's not always completely accurate. So you need to also kind of look at different ways of identifying things. And if you aren't sure what you've recorded and you've got a good photo, then iNaturalist is great because other people can suggest identifications for you. So it's kind of crowdsourced from lots of different people. And once the record reaches research grade status, which means that enough people have agreed that it contains all the right info needed to make a biological record, it will be passed on to iRecord and then also verified and sent to your local record centre. So then you'll be contributing to local databases of wildlife records and to things like nature recovery strategies and impact assessments. And both of these platforms, so iRecord and iNaturalist, also allow you to set up projects or activities, which means you can draw a line around your site and all different people's records from that site can be pulled in one place. So you can build up a data set over time, which is really helpful. The Nature Recording Hub also includes this year-round survey calendar for beginners, and each of the schemes that are included on this calendar are linked so you can click through to the organisation's website easily to do the survey. And there's also some seasonal highlights for people that just want some ideas of what to get started with. We then have some collections or packages of surveys and activities for a range of settings, and these include some ideas for wildlife activity days. For example, if you're looking for some kind of simple surveys to do with kids and adults on a community day, as well as a craft activity like making a bird feeder or a ladybird lodge or something like that, these are all in these. And they're more kind of for fun and engagement, and they provide kind of off-the-shelf collections of ideas. And then the main part of the hub is this range of catalogues of different species groups and topics. And each one takes you to a page with some highlights for people that don't want to browse the whole thing. They can just look at these kind of spotlighted surveys and have a go at those. And then for people that do want to browse, you can download a whole PDF with all the content in. So the catalogues contain a range of national recording schemes, other standard survey methods for different groups, and useful identification guides or resources for all the different species groups that you can see on the left here. And these PDFs contain the description of the survey, where you can do it, what equipment or experience is needed, time of year, etc. So you can just go, oh, cool, this survey sounds good. Yep, it's this time of year. I've got this equipment or I've got this level of experience. I'll give this a go. And these are just some of the front covers of these 22 catalogues and collections, which are now online on the website. And we're going to be adding a bit more content to the Nature Recording Hub later this year. So we're going to be adding a section around data, so where to record your findings, especially ad hoc records that aren't part of like a national recording scheme, which is what I've spoken about earlier about kind of iNaturalist and iRecord, and also where you can look at existing records and why this might be helpful, which I've covered earlier on in this about kind of going to a local record centre and looking online, that kind of thing. And then we're going to be adding a section about where to look for guidance on habitat creation, enhancement and management, and signposting some best practice advice and case studies. And this will link out to the Urban Nature Network, which I'll mention shortly. And we'd also love to know what else you think would be helpful for us to include in the Nature Recording Hub, or if there are any resources you think we should signpost which we haven't already. So please get in touch if you can think of anything. And this is just kind of the general idea of the Nature Recording Hub overall aim once we've got all the content on there at the end of this year. So you'll do some surveys in your local green space, upload your records somewhere, look at other records for your area to kind of see what's around, and then use all this information to make informed decisions about habitat management or creating new habitats, for example. And then the idea is that you then continue monitoring to see if it's improved the biodiversity on your site and kind of what action to take next. So just a quick talk about the Urban Nature Network, which is another part of the Urban Nature project. We've consulted with lots of stakeholders who are working, volunteering, studying, for example, in the field of urban nature. And through these consultations, we found that there is a need for a biodiversity-focused network of individuals and organisations to support each other and share knowledge and resources. And there's so many amazing projects, research, and lots of other work going on in the sector. And we want to be able to link people together so they can support each other, share experiences, and learn from like-minded people. So it's going to be hosted on the Mighty Networks platform. So it's a kind of closed, private social media group. You can get invited to join. So it's not like a Facebook group or anything like that. And at the moment, I'm gathering some content and initial member organisations this autumn and winter. And then we're going to be launching more widely next spring to kind of coincide with our gardens opening at the museum. So please get in touch if you'd like to join at this early stage and contribute anything like case studies. We can post articles, videos, polls. We can pose questions to kind of get a consensus from people. We can advertise events and much more. And members can comment on posts and they can chat with each other to get advice and share knowledge. So please get in touch via the email address on my first slide if you'd like to join and contribute now. Otherwise, you'll hear some more from me. I'll get in touch with Groundwork again when we're launching more widely to the public, and you can get the details of how to join then. We also have a big new community or citizen science project, which is going on until October this year, and we'll run it again next April to October. And it's called Nature Overheard, and it's a really fun survey to do, no matter your age or experience. It involves making a 5-minute audio recording on your phone or another audio device of the sounds close to a road or street, and also doing a short survey to see what insects you can find in any vegetation along the road. And the aim is to see how insect populations might be affected by noise pollution near to roads. And you can check out the website if you'd like to learn more or to take part in this survey. You can do it in any area of the UK and near any kind of road, from a small track to a main road. And we want to get loads of data points from all over the country, so it'd be great to get some people from your network involved. If you check out the website, you can see the survey methodology. You can request paper copies of the booklet, or you can download them, and you can watch a few videos about how we came up with the research question, that kind of thing. So please get involved with Nature Overheard if you can. And finally, one more plug from me is that the identification team in the Centre for UK Nature at the museum, which is the department that I work in, has a Facebook group which is called NHM UK Biodiversity. And the group has over 17,000 members, and it's a really cool group to join. You can just post photos of species you've seen that you don't know what they are and you need help identifying them. And you can also just learn a lot from others by seeing what gets put on the group. And there's museum experts and thousands of other people on there who can help you identify things, from fossils to bones to plants to invertebrates to birds, all sorts of things. So if you just post a clear photo with a little bit of info about where you saw what you saw, more often than not, someone will jump in straight away knowing what it is. And it's just a really cool, fun way to kind of pick up knowledge about different species across the UK and how to identify them. Thank you so much for watching, and please get in touch if you'd like to get involved with the network or have any ideas of things we can add to the hub to help you guys with monitoring biodiversity or working to improve it in your green spaces. And thank you very much. Bye.